What if the very people who spent decades telling you that you were nothing, that you owed them everything, that family means you take whatever they dish out, no matter how toxic? What if those same people suddenly needed you more than they have ever needed anyone in their entire lives? What if the generation that bragged about pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, that mocked weakness, that threw their own teenagers out on the street the day they turned 18 with nothing but a garbage bag of clothes? What if that generation is now old, sick, broke, and standing at your door asking for mercy? And what if millions of us look them dead in the eye and say, no, stay with me until the very end? Because by the time this video is over, you are going to see exactly why so many of us feel zero guilt about closing that door forever, and why the reckoning that is happening right now across this country was 50 years in the making. If you want more raw, no fish, no filter, angry guy content that tells the truth, nobody else will touch, smash that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss an upload. And while you are down there, go click the link in the description and check out Angry's Crypto Academy. That is where I teach you step by step how to buy, sell, trade, and most importantly, protect your money in this collapsing system so the same people who stole your future never get another dime of your wealth. The Academy is linked below. Go join thousands of us who are taking control today. And if these videos are speaking to your soul the way they speak to mine when I make them, show some love and buy me a Red Bull through the link in the description. Those wings keep the fire coming, and I appreciate every single one of you who keeps this channel fueled. Let's get into it. Picture this. You are a hospice nurse. You have seen more death than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. You sit beside beds where people take their last breaths, where families gather, or sometimes where nobody gathers at all. And over the last few years, something has started happening so often that it no longer surprises you. An elderly patient, usually in their 70s or 80s, usually from that baby boomer generation, will pull you close with whatever strength they have left and whisper the same request. Call my son, call my daughter, tell them I am dying. Tell them I want to see them one last time. And you pick up the phone, you make that call, because that is your job. You deliver the message with all the gentleness you can give. And more often than you ever expected, the voice on the other end of the line goes quiet for a second and then says, no, I am not coming. Sometimes they say more, sometimes they cry, sometimes they simply hang up, but the answer is no. A hospice nurse put this reality on full display not long ago, and the internet lost its mind because for the first time, millions of people heard someone in the medical field say out loud what so many of us already knew in our bones. She told the world that when these estranged adult children say no, she does not judge them. She does not try to guilt them. She tells them it is okay to feel relief when the person who hurt them finally passes. And if they want, she will even be the one to call and tell them when it is over. That video hit like a bomb because it validated what an entire generation of abused kids has been saying for years. Some wounds never heal, some apologies come far too late, and some doors stay locked forever for very good reason. I want you to think about how wild this moment in history actually is. For decades, we were told that blood is thicker than water, that family is everything, that no matter what your parents did, you owe them respect, obedience, and care in their old age. We were told that cutting off a parent made you the monster. And now, in real time, we are watching millions of adult children look at their dying parents and say, you made your bed, now lie in it. And the best part? Society is running out of ways to shame them for it because the stories are too many, the patterns are too clear, and the receipts are all over the internet. Let me take you back so you can see how we got here. The baby boomer generation was born between 1946 and 1964. They grew up in the greatest economic expansion the world has ever seen. They inherited a country with affordable housing, strong unions, low college tuition, and pensions that actually existed. They entered the workforce when a single income could buy a house, two cars, and a yearly vacation. And somewhere along the way, a whole lot of them decided that instead of passing that prosperity forward, they were going to pull the ladder up behind them and make sure their own kids had it worse. They told us we were lazy for not being able to buy a house on a part time job like they did. Never mind that the minimum wage in 1970 had the purchasing power of $24 an hour today. They told us college was necessary, then watched tuition skyrocket 5,000% while they paid a few $100 a semester. They told us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps while they voted for every policy that cut the straps off completely. And in millions of homes, they did something even darker. They raised their children with the same entitlement they showed the country. You exist to make me look good. You exist to carry my baggage. You exist to clean up my mess. And the moment you turn 18, get out. I did my part. I kept you alive. Now you are on your own. I want you to think about how many stories you have heard that sound exactly like that. Kid turns 18, parents hand them a trash bag, tell them to pack and change the locks. No college fund, no help with the first apartment, nothing. And then 30, 40 years later, that same parent is sick, broke, and calling from a hospital bed asking why their child never calls. Are you kidding me? The irony is thick enough to choke on. The generation that bragged about rugged individualism, that told us to sink or swim, that celebrated kicking their own kids to the curb the moment the law allowed it, is now discovering what happens when the kids learn to swim far, far away and never look back. They are discovering what happens when the system they hollowed out can no longer catch them when they fall. And make no mistake, they are falling hard. Right now, today, baby boomers are the fastest growing homeless demographic in the United States. The wealthiest generation in human history is becoming the fastest group to hit the streets in old age. How does that happen? Easy. They never learned money management because they never had to. They bought houses for $30,000 that are now worth $1 million. They spent like tomorrow was guaranteed. They refinanced those homes over and over, pulled out all the equity, and lived like kings. And now the payments are due. The equity is gone. Social Security barely covers the pills, and the kids they threw away are not answering the phone. I want you to picture the scene. A 78-year-old man who has not spoken to his daughter in 25 years gets the diagnosis: cancer. 6 months, maybe less. He calls her from the hospital. She does not pick up. He leaves a voicemail. Honey, it is dad. The doctors say I don't have much time. I would really like to see you. She listens to it once, deletes it, and goes back to her day. He calls again the next week. Same result. Finally, the hospice nurse gets involved and makes the official call. Sir, I spoke with your daughter. She is not comfortable coming to see you. She wishes you peace, but she will not be visiting. And you know what the number one response is from those dying parents? Not tears of regret, not please tell her I'm sorry. The number one response is anger. After everything I did for her, this is how she treats me? Everything you did for her? You mean the childhood where you told her she was worthless? The teenage years where you screamed at her that she was ruining your life? The 18th birthday where you put her stuff on the lawn and told her never to come back? That everything? This is the part that should make your blood boil and your chest swell with righteous vindication at the same time. These people are not reaching out because they suddenly grew a conscience on their deathbed. They are reaching out because they are scared, they are broke, they are sick, and they need something. They need a place to live, or money for medicine, or someone to change their diapers when they can no longer do it themselves. And the guilt trip is the last tool left in the toolbox. The hospice nurse saw it so often, she started calling it out publicly. When the dying parent asks us her to call the estranged kid, they almost never say, tell them I am sorry, tell them I love them, tell them I was wrong. No. The first question is almost always, did you tell them I am dying? Because they think the fact that they are dying is the ultimate trump card. They think it erases decades of damage. They think it magically turns them into the victim. And when the kid still says no, the mask slips. The anger comes out. The manipulation tries one last gasp. And when none of it works, they refuse to write the letter. the nurse offers. Because writing an actual apology would require admitting they were wrong. And the narcissistic core inside many of them will not allow that, even with one foot in the grave. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. That is the real story here. This is not about forgiveness that came too late. This is about control that is finally slipping away forever. And the beautiful poetic justice of it all is that the generation that taught us family first by treating us like garbage is now learning the hard way that family is a two-way street. You do not get to burn the bridge for 50 years and then act surprised when nobody is there to carry you across it when it is your turn to need help. We are living through a generational reckoning that is unlike anything this country has ever seen. The boomers are aging out of power. Their wealth is evaporating. Their health is failing. And the kids they discarded are standing up straighter than ever before, looking them in the eye and saying, no. This time, you figure it out on your own. And the best part, we are not doing it out of spite. We are doing it because we finally can. For the first time in history, we have the information, the community, and the financial literacy to build lives that do not depend on people who tried to destroy us. We are protecting our peace, our families, our money, and our future. And no deathbed guilt trip is strong enough to drag us back into the prison they called home. Let's keep rolling because this story gets darker, richer, and more satisfying the deeper we dig. Imagine you are 22 years old again. You just graduated community college with a 2-year degree because that was all you could afford, working 30 hours a week on top of classes. You have $12,000 in student loans already. Rent is $900 a month for a studio the size of a walk-in closet, and the starting wage in your field is $15 an hour before taxes. You call home because you are drowning and you need help. Maybe just a couple $100 to keep the lights on until the next paycheck. And the voice on the other end of the line, the same voice that once told you the world was yours if you just worked hard, laughs and says, welcome to the real world, kid. I was out on my own at 18. Figure it out. Click dial tone. Fast forward 35 years. That same parent is 77. The house they bought in 1978 for $48,000 is paid off, but the roof leaks, the furnace is shot, and property taxes went up again. Social Security covers the pills and half the groceries. Medicaid denied the long-term care claim because they make $23 a month too much. The reverse mortgage people are calling about missed payments. And the only child they have left, the one they told to figure it out, is now making six figures, owns a paid-for house, drives a nice truck, and has not spoken to them in 15 years. Guess who is getting that phone call now? And when that call goes to voicemail, guess who starts posting on Facebook about ungrateful kids these days? And nobody respects their elders anymore. The same people who bragged at the dinner table about kicking their own children out with nothing. The same people who said, my house, my rules, right up until the day the rules no longer worked in their favor. The same people who spent decades telling everyone within earshot that they did not owe their kids a dime after 18 are now absolutely shocked that their kids believe them. That is not hypocrisy. That is karma with a megaphone. You see, the boomer generation sold us a very specific fairy tale. They told us that life was a meritocracy, that if we just worked hard, we would have everything they had and more. Then they spent 50 years rigging the game so hard against us that the only way most of us ever get ahead is by refusing to play by their rules at all. They offshored the good jobs, financialized the housing market, turned higher education into a predatory loan industry, and then had the nerve to call us entitled when we could not replicate their 1960s standard of living on 2025 wages. And in millions of homes, they doubled down. They did not just rob us economically, they robbed us emotionally. They raised us with the constant message that our job was to make them comfortable, to keep their image clean, to absorb their rage, and to never, ever talk back. Many of them treated parenting like a 21-year lease with an ironclad eviction clause at 18. And when the internet came along and we all started comparing notes, we realized we were not the crazy ones. We were not the defective ones. We were not the failures. We were the survivors of a generational scam that dressed itself up as tough love. So when these same parents hit their 70s and 80s and suddenly discover that the world does not owe them care just because they managed to stay alive a long time, they panic. They reach for the only leverage they have left: guilt. They call hospice nurses, pastors, old family friends, anyone who will listen, and they say the same thing: tell my child I am dying. Tell them this is their last chance. And when that child still says no, the narrative flips overnight from "I taught them independence" to "how can they abandon me in my time of need?" Let me be crystal clear about something. Nobody owes their abuser a deathbed reunion just because biology is involved. Nobody owes their abuser a place to live just because that abuser is now old. Nobody owes their abuser forgiveness just because the abuser is running out of time. Forgiveness is earned through remorse, accountability, and changed behavior. And the statistics coming out of hospice centers all over the country right now show the exact same pattern. The parents who treated their kids well are surrounded by love in their final days. The parents who treated their kids like garbage die alone. That is not punishment, that is consequence. And consequence is the one thing this generation spent their entire lives trying to outrun. I want you to think about the math for a second because the numbers are brutal. In 2024, the average net worth of a boomer household was over $1 million. The average net worth of a millennial household was under 90,000. Boomers hold more than half of all wealth in the United States while making up less than 20% of the population. They are sitting on trillions of dollars in home equity, stock portfolios, and retirement accounts. And yet, the moment you mention estate tax or wealth tax, or even just asking them to downsize so their kids can afford a home, they scream about socialism and how nobody helped them, except somebody did help them. Their parents helped them. The greatest generation fought wars, built infrastructure, paid taxes at 90% top marginal rates, and left behind the most prosperous country on earth. And what did the boomers do with that inheritance? They spent it. They privatized the gains, socialized the losses, and told their own children to eat cake. And now that the bill is coming due and the restaurant is out of cake, they want us to pay the tab. That is why you are seeing story after story of boomer parents showing up unannounced at their estranged child's door with a suitcase, talking about how they just need a place to stay for a little while. That is why you are seeing viral videos of adult children calling the police to remove their own parents for trespassing. That is why senior homelessness is exploding, while food banks for the elderly have waiting lists that stretch for months. The social safety net they spent decades voting to shred is no longer big enough to catch them. And the family safety net they spent decades burning to the ground is nothing but ashes. And here's the part that should make you stand up and cheer. We are not going back. An entire generation of us looked at what was offered, looked at the price tag, looked at the scars, and said, hard pass. We are building our own families, our own communities, our own wealth, and we are doing it without the people who tried to break us. We are teaching our kids that love is not a blood tax. We are teaching our kids that respect is earned every single day, not handed over because someone contributed genetic material. That is the real revolution happening right now. It is quiet. It is happening one closed door at a time, one ignored phone call at a time, one deleted voicemail at a time, and it is unstoppable. Let me paint you another picture because these stories are piling up so fast, I cannot keep track of them all. A woman in her 50s reaches out to her 40-year-old son after not speaking for 19 years. She has stage 4 cancer. She is in hospice. She begs the nurse to call him. The nurse calls. The son listens to the message, takes a deep breath, and says, "Tell her I hope she finds peace, but I will not be visiting. And please do not call me again." The nurse goes back to the patient and delivers the message. The patient cries for 10 minutes, then asks the nurse to hand her the phone so she can call her son herself. The nurse refuses because the boundary has been set. The patient spends the next 3 days alternating between rage and tears, demanding to know how her son could be so cruel. She dies 6 days later without ever once saying she was sorry for the childhood she put him through. The nurse mails the obituary to the son because he asked to be notified when it was over. He reads it, nods, and goes back to coaching his daughter's soccer team. That story is not rare. That story is the new normal. And every time one of these stories hits the internet, the comment sections explode with two very different reactions. One side screams about unforgiveness and how nobody is perfect and how you only get one mom or dad. The other side, million strong, types the same three letters, NC, no contact. And then they share their own stories, story after story after story of parents who chose everything but their children, parents who chose addiction, parents who chose new spouses, parents who chose pride, parents who chose control, parents who, when given the choice between doing the hard work of repair and walking away, always chose walking away. And now that the tables have turned, they cannot handle being on the receiving end of the same medicine they prescribed. The truth is this: people who treated their children with love and respect do not end up dying alone. People who spent decades teaching their kids that love is conditional end up discovering just how conditional it really was. And no amount of public shaming, no amount of media hand wringing, no amount of celebrity podcasts with billionaires pretending to be neutral is going to change that math. We see you, Oprah. We see every celebrity from that generation who suddenly wants to have conversations about family estrangement the moment their own peers start hitting the wall. We see the subtle guilt trips dressed up as wisdom. We see the both sidesism that somehow always lands on the side of the people who had all the power when the damage was being done. And we are not buying it anymore. This reckoning is not going to be televised. It is going to happen one closed door at a time, one refused phone call at a time, one adult child at a time who finally gets to say, "You taught me how to survive without you, and I took excellent notes." The next layer of this story is the one nobody in the mainstream wants to say out loud, but we are going to say it here because this channel has never been about protecting feelings that were never concerned with protecting ours. The baby boomer generation did not just fail at parenting a statistically significant number of their children. They actively engineered a society in which their children would be forced to come crawling back. That was the plan. That was always the plan. Keep the kids broke, keep them scared, keep them dependent, and when they hit 40 or 50, they will have no choice but to move back in, take care of the parents, and hand over every extra dollar to keep the ship afloat. That is why they fought tooth and nail against affordable college, against affordable housing, against wage growth, against universal health care, against anything that would give their own offspring real independence. They wanted a permanent underclass, and they wanted that underclass to share their DNA. Think I am exaggerating? Look at the voting records. Look at who blocked the expansion of Medicare in the 90s and 2000s. Look at who screamed bloody murder every time someone suggested raising the minimum wage above poverty levels. Look at who refinanced their houses 6 times to buy boats and RVS while telling their kids to stop eating avocado toast if they wanted to save for a down payment. They did not just luck into a system that favored them. They weaponized that system to make sure the next generation stayed on a leash. And for a long time, it worked. For decades, millions of us were trapped. We took the degrees we could not afford. We took the jobs that paid half what our parents made at the same age, adjusted for inflation. We took the apartments that cost triple the percentage of income, and we still sent money home when the call came because we were raised to believe that abandoning a parent made us monsters. Guilt was the collar, and they held the chain. But then something shifted. The internet happened, smartphones happened, Reddit happened, TikTok happened. Suddenly, every abused kid in America realized they were not the only one. Suddenly, the stories poured out by the millions. Suddenly, we had language for what happened to us: narcissistic abuse, emotional neglect, parentification, financial abuse, covert incest, enmeshment, generational trauma. And once you name the beast, you can start to slay it. That is when the great walking away began. First, it was one person here, one person there. Then it was entire forums. Then it was entire subcultures. And now it is a tidal wave. Therapists are reporting that the number one reason adults in their 30s and 40s are seeking therapy right now is to process childhood trauma from boomer parents and to get the tools they need to hold no contact boundaries. Support groups for adult children of narcissists are overflowing. Entire online communities with millions of members exist for the sole purpose of 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 helping each other stay no contact when the guilt trips and the flying monkeys and the deathbed hoovers come rolling in. And the hoovering is real. These parents did not suddenly become selfless angels the moment the diagnosis came. They became desperate. And desperate narcissists are dangerous narcissists. They will weaponize cancer the same way they weaponized every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone. I might not be here next year becomes the new, this family would fall apart without me. They will call from hospital beds demanding you drop everything and fly across the country because family comes first. Never mind that they did not show up for your graduation, your wedding, or the birth of your children because it was too inconvenient. They will promise to change right up until the moment you let them back in. And then the mask slips again the first time you set a boundary. They will offer to move in just until they get back on their feet, which translates to forever, because the plan was always to make you the retirement plan they never bothered to fund. They will cry to anyone who will listen about how ungrateful you are, how you abandoned them, how they sacrificed everything for you, while conveniently leaving out the part where they spent your childhood telling you that you ruined their life by existing. And the worst part, a lot of them actually believe their own revisionist history. The human mind is capable of incredible feats of self deception when the alternative is admitting you were the villain of your own story. So they die convinced they were wonderful parents who got stabbed in the back by selfish children. And they never once sit with the truth that the only reason the nursing home smells like urine and regret is because they spent 50 years making sure nobody would ever love them enough to change that. I want you to understand how deep this goes. We are not talking about a few bad apples. We are talking about a generational pattern so consistent that hospice workers, therapists, estate attorneys, and elder care social workers all use the exact same terminology now. They call them the difficult ones. They call them the ones with no visitors. They call them the ones who refuse the chaplain because they are still mad their kids did not come. And every single one of those professionals will tell you the same thing off the record: the parents who end up alone almost always earned it. One cruel word, one broken promise, one discarded child at a time. Meanwhile, the kids they threw away are thriving in ways they never imagined possible. We are buying land. We are paying off debt. We are building businesses. We are raising children who will never know what it feels like to be told they are a burden. We are investing in crypto, in real estate, in skills, in communities that actually show up when someone is sick. We are protecting our peace with the kind of ferocity that only comes from knowing exactly what happens when you do not. And every time another boomer hits the wall and realizes the retirement plan they counted on was the same kid they screamed at for having feelings, the message ripples out to 1,000 more of us. Hold the line. Do not open the door. Do not answer the phone. Do not let them back in just because they are old and scared now. The time to fix this was 20, 30, 40 years ago when they had all the power and chose to use it to hurt you instead of help you. That window is closed. The statute of limitations on childhood expired the day you realized you were allowed to walk away. That is the part that still makes their heads explode. They cannot fathom a world in which consequences are real and permanent. They spent their entire lives believing that family meant unlimited chances, that love meant you had to keep coming back no matter how many times they burned you. And now they are learning that the new generation defines family as the people who treat us with respect, whether they share DNA or not. Blood might be thicker than water, but trauma is thicker than blood, and peace is thicker than both. Now, we are going to talk about the money, not opinions, not feelings. Cold, hard, documented numbers. Because once you see exactly how much wealth the boomer generation extracted from the future and parked in their own driveways, you will never again feel an ounce of guilt when one of them cries poor on a deathbed. In 1989, the median home price in the United States was $89,000. The median household income was $30,000. That means the typical family needed less than 3 years of income to buy the typical house. Fast forward to 2025. The median home price is $420,000 and the median household income is $74,000. That same ratio is now almost 6 times income. And in many cities, it is 8, 10, 12 times income. The house did not get 5 times better. Wages did not magically freeze for 40 years. What happened is a deliberate transfer of wealth from every generation born after 1965 into the property portfolios of people born before 1965. Every time a boomer bought a house in the 70s or 80s for 50 or $60,000 and sold it in the 20s for 800,000 or $1 million, that profit did not appear out of thin air. It came from the wages, the debt, and the delayed life milestones of younger buyers who had no choice but to pay whatever the market demanded. Boomers did not just ride a wave, they were the wave. And when the wave crashed, they walked away with the board while the rest of us drowned. Let us run more numbers. Between 1989 and today, the total wealth controlled by baby boomers went from roughly $6 trillion to over $70 trillion. 70 trillion. That is more wealth than the bottom 90% of the country combined. And almost all of it is locked up in real estate and stock portfolios that keep appreciating because younger people keep getting forced to bid higher and higher just to have a place to sleep at. And what did they do with all that extracted wealth? They spent it. They took out home equity loans at near zero interest rates and bought motorhomes, timeshares, cruises, and cosmetic surgery. They refinanced every 5 years, pulled cash out, and treated their houses like ATM machines. By 2019, Americans over 60 had racked up more credit card debt than any other age group for the first time in history. They were spending their children's future on present day lifestyle creep. And when the equity finally ran dry, they acted shocked that the bank wanted the money back. Look at 401k balances while we are here. The average boomer has about $250,000 saved for retirement, which sounds decent until you realize half of them have less than 100,000 and many have nothing at all outside Social Security. They were sold the lie that the stock market would go up forever and that real estate only goes up. They never learned to budget because they never had to. A house that cost 40,000 in 1975 was worth 400,000 by 2005 with no improvements, no effort, just time and inflation. They never had to manage, so they spent like the ride would never end, and now the ride is over. Here's the part nobody says out loud. The fastest growing group filing for bankruptcy right now is people over 65. The fastest growing homeless demographic is people over 65. The waiting lists for subsidized senior housing in most states are years long, and the reason is always the same. They lived on leverage, they never saved, and they counted on three things to catch them when they fell: Social Security, Medicare, and their kids. Two of those three are crumbling, and the third one finally learned to say no. They gutted Social Security too, by the way. In 1983, they agreed to raise the payroll tax and the retirement age because the system was supposedly going broke. They collected decades of extra taxes from younger workers, spent every penny of the surplus on tax cuts for themselves and wars they voted for, and left behind a trust fund full of IOUs that the same younger workers now have to pay back with interest. That is not a retirement program. That is the largest Ponzi scheme in human history. And the boomers were both the architects and the first wave of beneficiaries who got paid out before the music stopped. And do not even get me started on higher education. In 1970, the maximum Pell Grant covered 75% of the cost of a 4 year public university. Today, it covers less than 30%. Tuition at public universities has risen over 1,000% since 1980, while wages have risen less than 20% in real terms. Boomers went to college on tax dollars, got degrees that actually led to good jobs, and then voted to defund the entire system the moment their own kids needed it. They turned higher education from a public good into a predatory loan industry and then had the nerve to call us stupid for needing degrees to get the same jobs they got straight out of high school. Every single safety net they are falling through right now was cut by their own hands. They voted for Reagan, for Bush, for tax cuts, for deregulation, for personal responsibility when it applied to everyone but them. And now that personal responsibility has come home to roost. They want a do over. They want the kids they threw away to suddenly become the retirement plan they never funded. That is why you see these viral stories of boomer parents trying to reverse mortgage their kids' inheritance before they even die. That is why you see them selling the family home and spending every penny, then expecting their children to house them anyway. That is why nursing homes are filling up with people who have six-figure IRAs, but still cannot afford the $5 to $10,000 monthly bill because they spent the money on cruises and Corvettes instead of long-term care insurance they swore they would never need. And the very best part, when you point any of this out, they scream that you are ageist. They scream that you are jealous. They scream that nobody helped them, as if the GI Bill, subsidized mortgages, union wages, and a society that handed them prosperity on a silver platter never existed. They are the only generation in American history that will leave their children worse off than they found them. And they have the audacity to call us entitled for noticing. We are not entitled. We are awake. We see the math. We see the receipts. And we are done paying for their party. That is why the no contact movement is the most financially rational decision millions of us have ever made. Every dollar we do not spend bailing them out is a dollar we get to invest in our own future. Every boundary we hold is a brick in the wall that protects our wealth, our health, and our sanity. We are not abandoning them. We are refusing to let them finish the job of destroying us just because they finally ran out of other people's money. Now we step into the part they really hate, because up until this point, they could still pretend this was about money, about politics, about kids these days. But the truth is uglier, and it lives in the psyche. The reason so many of us will never open that door again is not because we are broke or bitter or brainwashed by the internet. It is because we finally understand the psychological warfare we survived, and we refuse to sign up for the sequel just because the abuser is old and the audience is clapping for a happy ending that never existed. You do not spend 20, 30, 40 years being told you are worthless, defective, a mistake, a burden, too sensitive, too dramatic, too loud, too quiet, too everything and not enough of anything else, and then suddenly flip a switch when the person who programmed that soundtrack starts losing control of the microphone. Trauma does not expire on the abuser's deathbed. The nervous system does not forget just because the calendar says it is time to forgive. And the soul that finally tasted freedom does not crawl back into the cage because someone on the outside calls it healing. These parents did not just hurt us, they trained us. They trained us to doubt our own memories. They trained us to flinch at loud voices. They trained us to apologize for having needs. They trained us to believe love had to be earned with perfect obedience and perfect silence. And then, when we finally broke free, they weaponized the very language of therapy they spent decades mocking. Suddenly, they are the victims of parental alienation. Suddenly, they are the ones who just want to reconcile. Suddenly, they are reading books about boundaries and love languages and sending us screenshots with crying emojis as if a Pinterest quote can erase decades of fists, words, belts, silence, or the thousand tiny cuts they call discipline. And when the direct approach fails, the flying monkeys descend. You know the flying monkeys. Aunt Karen, who has not spoken to you in 15 years, but suddenly calls because your mother is in the hospital and you need to get over whatever teenage drama this is. Uncle Bob, who sends the Facebook message that says, I don't know what happened between you two, but she's your mother. The cousin who tags you in a throwback photo with the caption, Family is forever, 2 days after the hospice nurse leaves the voicemail. The pastor who calls because your father found the Lord and wants to make amends. The old family friend who shows up at your job with a casserole and a guilt trip. They all say the same thing in different fonts. Your pain is inconvenient. Your boundaries are selfish. Your memories are exaggerated. Get back in line so everyone else can go back to pretending this family was normal. And the craziest part, most of the flying monkeys actually believe they are helping. They believe they are saving a dying person's soul. They believe they are preserving family. They have no idea that the story they have been fed for decades is missing 95% of the receipts. They never saw the closed door screaming. They never saw the bruises covered by long sleeves. They never heard the suicide threats used as leverage. They never watched a child beg to be loved and be told, I gave you a roof. What more do you want? They only saw the public face, the holiday smile, the Facebook posts about my babies. And now they are shocked that those babies grew up and walked away. That is the genius of narcissistic family systems. The abuse happens in the dark, and the image is polished in the light. The child is groomed to protect the parent's reputation at all costs, even if it costs the child their sanity. And when the child finally breaks the silence, the entire system mobilizes to silence them again, because the truth is radioactive to everyone who benefited from the lie. That is why the fake apology letters are pouring in right now. That is why the I don't remember it that way texts are blowing up phones across the country. That is why the deathbed confessions almost always stop short of actual accountability. If I ever hurt you, I am sorry is not an apology. It is a conditional non apology designed to reopen the door without ever admitting the door should have been locked decades ago. Real apologies have weight. Real apologies name the harm. Real apologies come with changed behavior long before the cancer diagnosis. Real apologies do not arrive with a moving truck and a request for a bedroom. Real apologies do not end with, but you weren't exactly easy to raise either. Real apologies are rare for the same reason real remorse is rare, because both require a level of self reflection that many of these parents spent a lifetime avoiding. And when the fake apology fails, the rage returns. The hospice nurses see it every week. The dying parent who spent days crying about wanting to see their child suddenly starts cursing that child's name the moment the boundary is enforced. The mask slips one final time, and the room fills with the same venom that filled the childhood home. After everything I did for them, they scream, as if raising a child to adulthood somehow entitles you to lifelong servitude. As if feeding and clothing a minor is a favor instead of the bare minimum the law requires. And then they die angry. They die convinced they were the victims. They die surrounded by paid staff or no one at all, wondering why love never showed up when they needed it. And the answer is staring them in the face from the empty chair beside the bed. Love was there the whole time. It just was not allowed to be itself. It was only allowed to be obedience. And the moment it chose freedom over obedience, it was labeled betrayal. That is the final lie they cannot escape. They did not lose their children. Their children finally escaped. We are the generation that looked at the contract we were handed. Blood means everything. Family means forever. Parents get the final word no matter what. And we tore it up. We looked at the cost of admission, our mental health, our finances, our future, and we said, not worth it. We looked at the people demanding we re enter the prison and call it reconciliation. And we said, you first. You go sit in therapy for 20 years. You write the itemized list of every harm. You make the amends without expectation. And maybe we'll talk, but probably not. And the freedom on the other side of that decision is indescribable. It is the first full breath after decades underwater. It is the first night of sleep without waiting for the next explosion. It is the first holiday where the only drama is whose turn it is to bring dessert. It is the first time you realize peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the absence of them. That is what they are really afraid of. Not dying alone, dying knowing they were the reason. We are in the final stretch now, and this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we turn all the rage, all the clarity, all the receipts into a blueprint so bulletproof that no deathbed voicemail, no probate lawyer, no tear soaked Hallmark card can ever drag you back into the cage you escaped. First rule: your peace is non negotiable, and peace is built with money, boundaries, and distance. The order matters. Money comes first because money is oxygen in this society. If you are financially entangled with a toxic parent, you are still on the leash. Every dollar they can withhold, every inheritance they can dangle, every bill they can guilt you into paying is another year they steal from your life. So you build a fortress. You get debt free or debt light. You max out every tax advantaged account. You buy assets that cash flow. You learn crypto, real estate, side businesses, whatever vehicle moves the fastest for you. Because the moment you no longer need their money, their power evaporates. A broke person can be guilt tripped. A financially independent person just laughs and hangs up. I teach this step by step in Angry's Crypto Academy for a reason. It is not about getting rich quick. It is about getting free quick. It is about making sure that when the call comes from the hospital social worker, your first thought is not, how am I going to pay for this? But thank God I never have to speak to that person again. That is the ultimate revenge, living so well that their chaos can no longer reach you. Second rule: boundaries are not walls you build once. They are muscle you flex every single day. You do not explain no contact to people who have never had to choose between their sanity and their family. You do not jade, justify, argue, defend, explain. You say the sentence and you repeat the sentence and you let them choke on the silence that follows. I am not available for that conversation. My decision is final. Please direct all further communication to my attorney. Short, boring, repeatable. The moment you engage in the debate, you hand them the steering wheel again. Third rule: protect the next generation with the ferocity these people never showed you. If you have kids, your toxic parents do not get unsupervised access, period. They do not get photos to post online. They do not get your address. They do not get cute little grandparent rights, sob stories in court, because you never let the relationship exist in the first place. You are breaking the cycle so completely that your children will never know what it feels like to be used as a retirement plan or a narcissistic supply. That is the real inheritance, a childhood without terror. When the parent finally passes and the will reading circus begins, expect the final Hoover. Expect cousins to crawl out of the woodwork talking about honoring your mother's wishes. Expect the lawyer to call and say there is money, but only if you attend the funeral. Expect the flying monkeys to hit you with, she loved you in her own way. Have your response scripted and ready. The inheritance can be mailed to my attorney. I will not be attending services. Please remove me from all further contact, Roy. Then you hang up and you go play with your dog. That is how you win the last round. And when the grief comes, because it will come, even for the worst of them, you let yourself feel it without letting it rewrite history. You can grieve the parent you needed and never had without mourning the parent you actually got. You can cry for the childhood that was stolen without picking up the phone to give the thief one more chance to steal your adulthood. You can light a candle for the idea of family while keeping the real family you built safe behind locked doors. That grief is yours. They do not get to hijack it. This is the part so many people never reach. They stay stuck in the anger or stuck in the guilt, and either one keeps the dead parent renting space in their head forever. The goal is indifference. The goal is the day you hear they passed, and your first thought is, okay, followed by making a sandwich. That day is coming for millions of us, and when it does, we will know we won. Not because we hated them the hardest, but because we loved ourselves the hardest. We are the generation that looked at the script we were handed. Parents are always right. Blood is everything. Forgive and forget. And we burned it. We wrote a new one. Peace over performance. Freedom over family. Future over forgiveness that was never earned. And every single day we live by that new script. We prove that the greatest payback is not revenge. It is disappearance. It is building a life so full, so rich, so joyful that their absence becomes the best gift they ever accidentally gave us. So when the phone rings and the nurse says, your parent is asking for you, you take a breath, you remember every single thing we just walked through together, and you say the words that set you free forever. Tell them I wish them peace on their journey. I will not be visiting. Then you hang up, you hug your kid, you check your portfolio, you kiss your wife, you walk your dog, and you go live the life they spent decades trying to convince you that you did not deserve. That is the reckoning. That is the victory. That is the end of their story and the beginning of ours. What did you think about everything we just went through? Do you agree? Do you see yourself or someone you love in these words? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories are the fuel that keeps this channel burning. Like the video, if it hit you right in the soul, don't forget to subscribe. And if it spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear they are not crazy for walking away. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away. And cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.